Last video I got the radiator mounted in, so we basically just took these little tabs, welded these tabs in, got everything bolted in, and now I'm going to be working on the intercooler mounting. So I'm using this CX Racing 2-to-1 intercooler. Does dual 2.5 in and then one 3-inch out. Basically going to be modifying it by cutting that whole outlet off of there and then putting it in a different spot. So I'm going to start with that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that outlet off of there. I'm going to put some material inside of it, and then I'm going to put a vacuum in it while I'm cutting it to try to keep some of the material out of it. And then once that little outlet is cut off, it won't be hitting the radiator anymore, and then I can mount that where I want, and then I'll figure out the outlet after that. So let's do it. Okay, so I did throw the hood on so I can get the intercooler and everything mocked up. One, because I wanted to test fit it, make sure everything's still good, which it does look pretty good. This one does have a little bit of a gap. These fenders are still loose, like that fender's loose. And the hood can move over a little bit more because one of the bolts on the backside is stripped out, so it's tweaked a little bit. But I got this thing sitting in there just on a brick on top of a box to kind of eyeball it. And I did test fit the factory hood latch, so I'm kind of making it my life's mission here to make this factory hood latch work. I think that would be really cool. So I'm going to start figuring out what I need to do for that. There is a big hole up in the hood, so I think I can probably either modify this bar or modify the actual bracket because there's a lot of extra material in the bracket. I'm going to start by cutting this little safety lever off. And this is just the one you push over, like after you pop the release. This one, it catches on this. So I'm going to cut that off so I'll have a little bit more room to work with. I do have a little bit more room. I can sink the latch actually into the hood. And there's a lot of extra stuff on the bottom of the latch that's not really being used by anything. So I can probably remove some material from the latch. I did take the large spring out of the back side of it so I can do all that by hand. I don't have to fight the spring. But I'm going to work on figuring out what I need to do here. It'd be cool if I could get it to sit right in this little cavity for the intercooler and actually still function. That'd be sweet. Okay, so I built this little bracket on the back side of here. I just drilled and tapped it into this piece of 3/16 flat stock, and now I kind of traced around where I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to unbolt this thing, cut it, and then I think what I'm going to do is probably weld the bracket off the back of this thing right to the front bar. So I got this kind of tacked on. Let's see, I took a grinder and I actually broke the tacks that I had on the top. So it was tacked with 2 tacks on the bottom, and I could actually pivot it. So that tack there was just to kind of try to lock it in place a little bit better. I want to test the hood fitment. I want to test the hood closure, I guess, and see how it closes. Before it was tilted back a little bit, so what I did now is just make it level, and hopefully that should be enough to get it where I need. I'm not going to tighten this too much because I don't want to break the tacks off. I'm just going to snug it. So here's kind of what I'm working with here. So I have the factory opening up at the top where the striker was. And what I'm going to do is have this sunk down in a little bit more. But it's actually hitting right here where the factory little U-bolt is. Or U-clip. I don't know what you want to call that. Where the bolt goes through. So it does hit a little bit. I do have room in the front. I do have room on the side. Just hitting a little bit on the back there. I can probably do some trimming. Might be able to rock it out a little bit, tilt it forward a little bit more. Maybe vertical isn't exactly the right angle for it. Okay, so I did a little bit of trimming on it. A little bit of trimming on the back side of the plate here. I did finish that other tack. Trimmed this thing. Now, it doesn't hit at all. So the noise is coming from hitting the little rubber stoppers on this side. It's not hitting the plate at all. I can feel it not hitting. This fender's a little wonky because it's loose over here, and it is actually sagging down a little bit farther than it normally should because I have it sitting on the gloves. That's kind of what I'm using for spacing right now. So it'll actually sit a little bit higher. So I got a little bit more room to adjust. I still have the factory adjustment on the factory latch. And then I just got to figure out how I'm going to do the striker. I do have the factory striker bolt holes, and I'll keep those there. What I think I'm going to do is actually take some of the same 3/16 plate, and I'm going to make a little ring around here that I can weld a piece of the factory striker into. And that way when it comes down, it'll just hit. So I'll still have a hole with the striker coming through it, and blammo, it should work spectacularly. Oh, and the most important part that I forgot to show. I'll use my torsion bar hood prop here. And I'm going to get this little level out of the way. Let me grab the intercooler. So the intercooler, it does fit. You can see there's a little bit of wiggle room so the latch isn't touching. And my weld line is just below the bumper. So that's like kind of exactly where I wanted it. Be able to go down a little bit, but I'll space it off of the bar. The top of the intercooler is basically flush with the top of the bar here. And it's not hitting the latch. My weld line is flush with the bottom of the bumper. So that means that the grill, when I put the grill on, the bottom of the grill opening will be flush with this weld seam right here. So it's almost like I tried some of this stuff. So that one actually spit out. It spit a hole in the tube. You can see you got the tungsten all dirty. You can see it going along nicely, and then it blasted a hole there. So this tube is completely sealed, welded all the way around. So that one got full penetration all the way through the tube, and it like pressurizes inside the tube and it spits air out of it. So I should actually have like a little pressure bleed hole off so I can fully weld that thing. Alright, so I pulled the front bar out and I'm going to drill just in the plate in the end of the tube so I can put a little pressure relief hole in there. Alright, so I got my little hole there. Now I'll be able to go back over this and weld it. I have been able to get them to seal like that, but this spot is in a spot you'll be able to see, so I don't really want to keep boogering over it to try to get it to seal. I'd like this spot to look presentable if possible. that's how the weld turned out. You can see right in the middle where I had to start over, my consistency kind of completely changed. This first spot I was also propping on the intercooler because I did take the intercooler out when I moved it. So that's just kind of interesting to note. So that's when I had a good place to prop my hand, and that's when I did not. Next I'm going to do the opening for the striker, and basically what I had here was a template of the opening, like the striker opening. So there's one bolt hole here, one bolt hole here. So I cut it in half because this material is not wide enough. This is that 3/16 plate. Cut it in half, made 2 templates, and then I'm going to cut these. I'll cut this out of it, and then I'm going to weld them together. So it'll be basically one big ring, all welded together. Alright, so I got those pieces cut out now. I just clamped them into bench vise and then went over it with the grinder and the flap wheel. Made them basically pretty even. So now I'll test fit them on the hood. Okay, real quick because the battery's about to die. So essentially it matches this hole. I will be able to take some material off here and close it up a little bit. But essentially that's gonna be how it goes on there, and then I'll have room to drill mounting points out, and I'll still be able to mount it the same way. And then basically I'm just going to run a rod right from here to here, and hopefully that will go in the latch and work. Okay, so I got this plate all finished up now. Just welded it together here. I did go kind of around the whole thing with the sander. There are some low spots that I might clean up a little bit more, but I'm not too worried about that. So it fits right around the hole pretty nice. So now I'm gonna start working on mocking up where I need to put the striker. So on the left side here is part of the factory striker that I ended up cutting up, and I went to go get a grade 8 bolt. It's about the same size, about 5/16. So I've got a grade 8 bolt. That's what I'm going to use for the new one. New opening. This one isn't wide enough, and I'm going to have to weld it in somewhere around here. Ended up getting this bolt because it's long enough, and I might end up having to go at some kind of an angle like this. So a couple things I discovered when putting this down, the bolt actually hits the back side of that plate that I built. So I'm going to have to modify that, cut that down a little bit. And then this bolt it's going to go in somewhere around here. If I do it parallel with the plate, it's not going to be perpendicular to the latch. Parallel with the plate, it's going to come down at an angle like this. If I do it at a little bit of an angle to the plate, I'll have it come down perpendicular to the latch, and then it'll sit in there like this instead of in there crooked like that. So what I'll do is I'll come in off the front side, I'll make a little standoff, and then I'll make another little one in the back a little bit taller to put it at an angle. So this is kind of what I had for an idea on this. So angle of the hood, it'll go in straight. Cut a piece, drilled some holes on each side. That way it's has a little bit of strength from the plate. And then I'll be able to cut and then weld the bolt into the plate and then weld the plate here. And then that way with the little loop around the bolt, it's not relying completely on the weld to hold it in. So I'm just going to leave this tacked on for now. I did mark the back side of this where I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to take a grinder and I'm going to come across the top. Mainly because this side hits on the bolt over here, but the main part is I got to notch this out so the bottom of the striker plate can come in. Okay, so here is the plate. Alright, so here is this plate. It doesn't look too beautiful, but did my best on it. And I've been working on this thing for probably almost 4 hours now, so I'm kind of just over it at this point. But I think it should work out pretty decent, so let's test fit it. Okay, so I did some test fitting here, and I'm just going to actuate the lever with my hand because the cable's not hooked up. So I pull the lever, and then it comes up and it catches on the factory latch, and then I can push it over and latch it. I just can't slam it because I had to trim some of the angle off. This piece was a little bit taller and it had a sharp angle on it, so when you slammed it down, it would push this over to the side. But now that's flat because I had to cut it off for the distance, so I'll just have to remember not to slam it. But I just push that over to the side, drop it down. Hold on. The latch doesn't have the spring on it right now, so sometimes it falls in. All right, so I lower it down, just push that piece over, and then it comes down and latches. So that should work out pretty decent. And you know, I'm not too worried about having to push this lever over, the little safety catch lever. I'm not too worried about having to push that over. Not a big deal. I mean, remembering to push that thing over is less of a hassle than dealing with like hood pins or anything like that, so should work. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. I'm gonna pop the hood. There you go. Look at that. I'm pretty excited about this, guys. I've been out here for about 7 hours today and just kind of messing with this thing. I had to cut and like build a new bracket for the cable because I trimmed so much off of the bottom of the latch to get it to fit inside here. So I welded a new section on. As I said before, I can't just slam it, so I just got to move that out of the way. But it actually does work out pretty good. I did buy these little hood stoppers on Amazon. These are all rusty, so I don't even think I'm going to try to get them out. I think what I can do then is just just make a little tab and weld a little tab onto the backside and still be able to use the hood stoppers. Because right now it does kind of rock back and forth, so it'd be nice to stabilize it. And it does have a little bit of play inside there, which the factory hookup does that also, but with the stoppers on it, you can kind of wedge the hood down against the stoppers and latch it really tight in there. So yeah, I'm very happy with this. Let me pop it again. I'll show you guys that bracket. So this bottom section was all trimmed off, and the cable was actually a little bit lower. So I trimmed off the whole cable piece. So I ended up just building a new little bracket, welded that on there, drilled a hole for the spring to go through because that bracket actually covered up the factory spring hole, and then I cut a little notch in there for the spring to go in. So that all works out pretty well. You can see I did get new bolts to hold it in. The bolts are the same bolts that are holding in the radiator, or same type of head. So yeah, if you look at this little stopper piece, this would be like the back corner where I cut. So if I measure that with my hand, because that's how we measure stuff, and I put my hand on that same mark, if I just weld a little tab right off of the back side of this thing here, that's about where that little stopper will be. So I'll probably do another couple tabs off the back side, thread that stopper in. I probably won't make a video on that, but next I'll be working on this intercooler. I wanted to try to get this all into one video, but I didn't think I was going to spend so much time on this hood latch deal, but I'm happy with how it turned out, so I think I'm going to make it its own video. This is what that top striker piece looks like. This turned out actually pretty well. I mean, you can kind of see a lot of, different lines and textures on it, but I think if I do like a, good couple layers of paint on it, everything should look fine. I didn't end up cutting all the way across on this bracket. I just kind of left it where it was, and then I just notched this section out here for the bolt to come down, so that's not too bad. I did take the flap wheel on that little V section there, so that V is for this piece right here. So this comes down and that V basically falls right into that little V on the back side of that. One other thing I was thinking about doing, and this is just being picky, but I think I'm going to change that spring for the latch down there. That's a really thin spring and it does have some rust on it. So just to kind of avoid any potential issues with it. But the feel of the latch feels better than it did before. It has like a really soft pull on it and it pops really nice. So I'll actually show you the pull and you can see when it pops. Like very nice. Even before I did all this stuff, it had a really crappy feel on it. There was a lot of slack in it. So I would pull it almost all the way out and then it would come to a dead stop and then I would have to yank it and it would pop open really hard. So I don't know what about this process changed all that, but it feels really smooth. Like I don't feel like I'm gonna break the cable now. I'm sure you guys probably know what I'm talking about when you feel like you gotta yank the damn thing and you feel like you're gonna break the damn cable. It doesn't do that anymore, so that's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this one up. Next will be the intercooler, getting that mounted and then doing all the piping. I might be able to make that video a little bit longer with actually doing some of the piping, or at least figuring out how I want to do the top. I did get some aluminum, so this is 1/8 inch. This is 2 sheets of 1/8 inch, 12 inch by 12 inch aluminum plate basically. So I got that so I can block off that hole, and then if I want to build off like a little tank or anything on the bottom side for the other pipe, or if I wanted to get adventurous, I could build like another tank off of here and have a pipe come out the bottom. Something like that. So we got some fresh metal. Next video will be getting that stuff mounted, and then after that I would like to start mounting the turbos and getting that stuff mocked up. So see you next time.